Hey guys, good evening. Mitch Taco Bell. I'm your host for Tall Tales with Taco. If you've been following my little podcast that I have here, last week we had an incredible show dealing with AI and how that affects us. Well, how it actually affected a airline flight, Airbus 330, and we discussed with the pilots about the computers taking over. Imagine having absolutely no control. Say your car was on autopilot and you could turn the wheel with no effect. The computer logic and things that we are discussing tonight is something that is really coming into our lives, whether it's self-driving automobiles or an airline trying to take over and say that we're going to have single pilot operations. In this episode tonight, I've also brought along Jason Depew, who has written an incredible article about pilots versus AI and how that affects us and where we see this going in the future. And he breaks it down Barney style. Really, really great piece. I'm going to have, actually in the description, I have Kevin and Pete's experience in Kevin's book, No Man's Land. I have the title of that in the description, and also Pete's article where you can click on that link and check that out as well. Highly recommend reading it if you're a big fan of a self-driving car that starts with the letter T. Then you probably should listen to this show and read those articles about how the computer systems are really working. It's gonna wake you up to understand H.A.L and his motives. So without further ado, this is a great night. I've got Jason Depew.
Hey, Taco, Kevin. Good to be here.
Hey, how are you, brother? Kevin Sullivan and Pete Lipsett. So we've got two from down under, down in Australia, mate. Yeah, Pete, good to hear your voice down there. And, of course, we got Kevin in my horrible Australian accent. And then Kevin's in Australia as well. And, Jason, you're in Tampa, Florida, right?
That's right, yep.
So we've got 3 airline captains here with us tonight. 4 airline captains with us tonight at 3 major airlines, and we are all affected by computers. Face it, we're flying one big giant computer, unless of course you're still slugging it away on a Mad Dog somewhere, which I think all those are gone.
Ours are all gone.
Yeah, they're all gone. Bless their hearts. 57 Chevy. That thing's sitting out in the desert. I miss that airplane, actually.
Yeah.
That was kind of fun. Well, is there anything that I missed last week, gentlemen, that after the show maybe you thought you wanted to tell the audience again? I'll give you this opportunity to start out where we kind of pick up last week. For the folks just watching, Qantas 72, if you haven't seen it, it's also on Discovery Channel, Aviation Disasters, right, Kevin?
Well, I think it's different everywhere, but air crash investigations.
That's it.
And also on YouTube, QF70 under QF72, there's a recreation on YouTube as well. That's over 10 million views, almost 10.5 million views now in 2 years.
Wow.
So people get a chance to actually see what you experienced and how out of nowhere this happened. Real quick, kind of talk about what the mindset was for the production of that airplane that you were flying and how that actually screwed you and everybody else, nearly killed you. And not to scare anybody, because we're all airline guys. This is professional hangar talk. There are certain issues that need more identification, I think. And I'll qualify this with, yes, airplanes are safe. You have a greater chance of being kicked in the head by a donkey than you do of having one of these accidents. But when one of these accidents occur, then it really wakes you up to what the future possibilities could be, I think. Kevin, is there anything that you wanted to say?
I think, well, to summarize what we were talking about last time and to start what we're going to talk about today, the shift is to make the computer the priority in an airplane. So the computer is number 1 and the pilot is number 2. And traditionally, the pilot was controlling the plane and computers were monitoring the pilot. Now it's flipped. The computers are controlling the plane and the pilot is monitoring. And that's a tough job, to be a passive monitor as a pilot and then to become an active controller if something goes wrong. And it builds complacency. You're waiting for the automation to wake you up. And now you've got to shift from a monitor to taking action. And that's very tough. And I can tell you, it was very tough because we were ambushed. And Airbus have made automation, the whole airplane is automated, computer driven. And automation now is a crew member, it's part of the crew. And it should be there to supplement the crew's operation. But in our case, we had a bad crew member. The automation caused confusion. It maneuvered the plane violently without notice or warning. It caused injuries, and it stopped communicating with us. And you think, well, if I had a crew member like that, I'd get the flexi cuffs out and zip them up and put them in the toilet till the end of the flight. But now we are stuck with that. And are we prepared to deal with a bad automated crew member? And that, to me, is the question. And I don't think we are. I think pilots need to be prepared for that. But as we were talking about before, we're not. We're prepared for engine failure. We're prepared for hydraulic failures, electrical failures, which are conventional failures. Computer problems and failures and automated failures are not conventional. And in our case, it was a waterfall, a cascade of failures that we're overwhelmed. And it's like, where do we start? Or fall back to, well, let's just use what is still working and get this plane on the ground. So the artificial intelligence of an Airbus or a fly-by-wire plane, it's the same for Boeing now, 787, 777 are fly-by-wire airplanes. The operating envelope, which is programmed into the flight control computers, that is the artificial intelligence to say, keep the airplane, keep yourself inside these hard boundaries. And if you touch those boundaries, then you have active protection modes to keep yourself or keep the plane inside and safe. And the flight control computers go, Roger that, but I don't care about who's inside the plane. The frailty of the human cargo is not a consideration when you hit one of these boundaries. And as we experienced, two protection modes acting in a sandwich to generate a huge force. And I've sent you some photographs, Taco, of the damage.
I'm going to post this. Here we go.
Yeah, that these are people's bodies being catapulted into the ceilings. And does the computer say, "Oh, I got human beings on board. I better be a bit gentle about this"? No, it takes action, and it is aggressive, unbiased action to stay away from that boundary. So that's what I would say. And this is the back alley. You can see
the bar on the left is where
there.
Fuzzy went through.
The bar, you can see there's a little bit of a bend in that stainless steel bar. That was bent by Fuzzy's body coming back down off the ceiling.
Well, this is the horrible one that I was thinking, who would like to be covered in blue juice? Well, it's all pressurized anymore nowadays, but still, how would you like to have your own stuff as this toilet is flipped upside down?
There were people in the toilets, of course. We just finished the meal service, and here's a thought. 5 minutes earlier, those big metal meal carts, were still out in the cabin.
Right.
And they had only just put them away. Can you imagine those things getting catapulted around the cabin? And this is what Peter was talking about, panels everywhere, and passengers on their own initiative were pulling those panels and putting them like this in between their seats to clear the aisles. And what the passengers were doing on their own initiative was amazing as well. So automation, and who's driving it? It's the airlines, because liability, training costs. We want an airplane that's safe, that the pilots don't have to do much to keep it safe. The plane will keep itself safe. And that is the mantra. And they're the ones that are driving it. It's not us. It's not the pilots going, hey, we want a totally automated plane. We don't want to fly it. We just want to sit there and play on our iPads. No, that is what's driving it. It's cost, auto throttle systems, computer generated flight plans, all optimize fuel, and fuel is a cost, and so is training. They're all costs. And I know that's in my opinion, that's what's driving all these automated aircraft systems and the push for a single pilot in cruise. So bad idea, but save money. So it's all money, money, money. And now with COVID and recovering from extended grounding period, we're still closed down here. So who knows when that will open up. So it's tough to be in the airline business, and they're trying to save money to operate.
Here's a really great question for Jason, between Jason and Kevin. See if this will show here. I'm having issues. Basically, it says traditionally Airbus and Boeing have had distinctly different flight deck automation philosophies. Setting aside the MAX debacle, do you think Boeing has now moved closer to the Airbus philosophy? And if you guys don't know, they talk about the Airbus takes, whoops, we lost Kevin for a second. The Airbus takes a good pilot and makes him average, and makes an average pilot really good. So that has been thrown around quite a bit. Kevin, did we lose you there? Got you back. So what do you think? Yeah, what do you two think about the difference between Boeing philosophy and Airbus philosophy? And do you think Boeing's moving closer to it? That was a great question, Sammy. Jason?
Yeah, Jason, what do you think?
Sure. Well, I'm not a Boeing engineer, so I don't know exactly what they're thinking. But I have seen the 777 and the 787 are fly-by-wire, and you can't implement fly-by-wire without adding in some more automation, some more computer in the loop type controls. So it's just necessary on a technological level. On the other side, one of the original selling points of the A320 over the 737 was, it takes less training to fly it. It's more computerized. It's easier, right? And so all these third world countries where you can't have these little boys and girls, affording to fly from the time they're 14 years old, you get all these thousands of hours. You can go to anywhere in the world and take a pilot and give them a few hours of training and throw them in the right seat and go. And you see Boeing selling airplanes to the same countries that Airbus is, to pilots with the same experience level. So they have to be relying more on automation if they're marketing to those types of pilots, I think.
Yeah, and what I would say, and it's not my quote, I stole this quote, but this new generation of fly-by-wire airplanes, they're easier to fly, but they're harder to save when they start malfunctioning. And I know Peter will agree with that as well. What is your opinion, Pete?
Yeah, I was hearing Jason saying, they're easier to fly. I thought that's an incomplete sentence, though. They're easy to fly when they're working.
Yes.
Is the complete sentence.
Right.
And that's the whole truth. And I feel like having flown, I had about 10,000 hours on 747s. So I'm a Boeing guy through and through, but I've flown two different sorts of Airbus as well, and a 73. But I love Boeing's design philosophy, where there is such a good feedback loop. I'm getting off track a little bit here, Taco, for a second, but
that's all right.
Such a good feedback loop. I can see what the guy in the other seats are doing with the controls. I can see where the thrust levers are. I get that thrust levers don't necessarily need to move to be functional, because I've flown Airbus, I understand it. But having those moving thrust levers is just such a bloody good idea for just awareness. You rest your hand on it, and if you're distracted when there's a level off or it needs more thrust or less thrust, these things move under your hand and draw your attention to what's going on in that particular aspect of the flight. Similarly, having the controls move under your hand from the yoke to me, it's just a no-brainer that feedback loop is so important and it's so well provided with Boeing. Flip that to Airbus. I was only reading the other day, and with no disrespect for a minute to these poor guys, the two guys on Air France 447, one full back stick, one full forward stick, and the aircraft goes, oh, I don't know what you want from that. I'll sum those two inputs, net result 0, cancelling each other out. And these guys being unaware because the feedback loop is not provided by the aircraft manufacturer.
Right.
Just blows my mind that is considered a good idea. I mean, it's out there. It's only my opinion. I hasten to add, Mr. Airbus, if you're listening. But, yeah, you just lose so much by not having those moving controls, the visible controls, and the feedback to the pilots in that continuous loop that Boeing will provide to you. To touch on two things that Kev mentioned, he mentioned this waterfall of information. Yeah, there was. And in fact, the aeroplane was telling us what was wrong. But there is so much information that it's just impossible to pick that one thing you need to fix it. It's completely just lost in the noise. And talking about complex failures giving complex problems, I think there's very little understanding industry-wide about just how much interaction there is between systems, how much effect we talked last week, Taco, about the GPS being out of the nav solution in our aircraft generated a thought process, a design feature, the engineer would say, that says, oh, you're on the ground because the GPS isn't on. The pilot can't select that off. If it's off, you must be on the ground. If you're on the ground, why isn't the outflow valve open? Now I will depressurise the cabin for you. It doesn't recognise that you're at flight level 370. It just goes, oh, you're on the ground according to this part of the system. We're depressurising.
Right.
So stuff like that is just sitting there in the background. It's not in the flight manual. It's not in the FCOM. It's waiting there to hit you over the head with a baseball bat on the day that it all goes wrong. So, yeah, back to the start of my little rant, sorry. They're easier to fly, but they're only easier to fly when they're working.
Absolutely.
How's that?
Yeah, no, that's good. And
I'm done.
when you think about and you look at some of the other accidents out there, Asiana had a fully up and working 777 that goes into level change. The captain doesn't realize when it says arm, that means my arm controls the throttles, and the airplane just kind of does this until it stalls. And God love him, man. We too low. He really messed up. he really messed up. But then you had Turkish Airlines had a 737 that the radar altimeter was in op, which gave false information. Because at 27 feet, the throttles come back in a regular airplane. So since the radar altimeter judging the distance to the ground was not working, I have to remember to try to dumb this down for the Mitch Bells out there watching who aren't aviators. But so the radar altimeter bounces signal to the ground, tells you how high you are. And at 27 feet, the throttles automatically come slowly back. And in this case, the radar altimeter was busted on the FO side. And they were a couple 100 feet, thinking the computer thought they were close, and it wiped the power off. I guess it was rough air, and the guy was doing this, didn't have his hand on the throttle. The other guy wasn't backing it up, which I think is training. We train all of our guys below 1,000 feet. You back the throttles up. And so in that case, the airplane stalled out low. When they tried to recover, they were too low. Impacted, killed 8 people. So there are lots of things that we become complacent. I think complacency is the biggest danger that we have as aviators, because if the computer is doing so much, you're just kind of sitting back like this, and until something goes wrong, then all of a sudden you can jump in and help it. And that actually segues into Jason's article on somebody had asked you a question, right? Self-automation for airplanes and airlines. And will I have a job? Is this something I need to tell my kid to do this profession? Because we're going to be all outsourced by H.A.L in 2030. To go into your article a little bit about why this is not possible, because it's a great.
Sure, yeah. So the first thing that comes to mind is hearing Pete and Kevin talk about their situation, the things they were seeing. you're getting overspeed and underspeed warnings at the same time, right? You're getting all different systems warnings. The GPS is gone, so it thinks it's on the ground and it's depressurizing. One of the interesting things about AI in science fiction is we picture this single entity controlling everything. We picture Commander Data on the bridge of the Starship Enterprise, or we picture HAL in the Space Odyssey as this one overarching intelligence. And that pseudo person, that artificial person, is looking at airspeed and looking at pressurization and looking at the throttle position, all this. That's not how it works. In whether it's an A330 automation or a self-driving car or anything else, it's a bunch of individual systems and individual computer programs that are each only capable of doing one thing. So on your A330, you were getting overspeed warnings because there's one software program that says, stare at the airspeed indicator, and if it's going too fast, start screaming, overspeed, overspeed, overspeed. And if the throttles are available to you, pull them back. So it's trying to do that. Then you have a completely separate computer program looking at underspeed. And so it looks at the airspeed indicator, and if it's going too slow, it says underspeed, 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 and tries to push the throttles up. And there is no Commander Data, there is no HAL integrating those two things together on some higher level. And so anytime you try to do automation at these levels, there's going to be competing signals, and you're going to get problems, especially in a malfunction. And so, go ahead.
Your analogy of what was the movie with the little minions?
Yeah, the Minions. Or,
your analogy of the minions driving the car. That's a great analogy for people to understand. Just not about airplanes. I mean, you're all the different systems, but just say a car.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's working the gas, somebody's working the brake, somebody's steering, somebody's looking left, somebody's looking right, somebody's doing the navigation, and all those systems we're supposed to monitor and control. Correct?
Right, and there isn't that there's a human controlling it all, but on the computer side, there's no computer looking at all those and integrating them. It's just if the guy looking right starts screaming, the steering wheel steers a little bit left. And if the guy looking out the front window screams that there's a car ahead, the guy on the brake pedal slams on the brakes. But there's nobody thinking about that whole thing all put together.
That's exactly right. And this is one of the things. I mean, shoot me down in flames here, Jason, if I've got this wrong. But my feeling on this is that even though it's incredibly smart in many ways, it's really clever, right? AI,
yeah, absolutely.
And automation. It's just a dumb machine. When it comes down to it, it is a dumb machine.
Yeah.
And you can see that in a lot of little subtle ways, just in your daily operation. Nothing going wrong, but like classic Boeing, classic 737 on descent, approaching transition, for example, starts getting slow, following the path, gets a bit slow, gets a bit slow, gets a bit slow. As soon as it gets to 15 knots, I think, below speed, it goes, oh, I need a whole bunch of thrust. Bang, puts the thrust up just in time to go, oh, transition, drag required. Okay, so it can't see that. It can't see that develop.
It can't see it, and it can't anticipate it.
Because that's your guys. Your guy keeping the path. Your guy looking at the speed. Your guy going, oh, now you need drag, and they're not talking to each other. So it's clever, but it's dumb in some ways too. Is that fair to say? Absolutely,
that's absolutely right. So another interesting part of this is, your Airbus A330 from your accident. It has what Airbus probably calls it is artificially intelligent. It doesn't have AI in the kind of contemporary meaning of the word. What it has is line upon line of computer code, right? If the airspeed is too slow, throttle come back. If the airspeed, whichever you need. And I remember Kevin on the show last week, you held up the report, the malfunction report, right? And so with a program like that, it's possible to look at the computer code and look through every single line and take that report that you have and look at that and say, oh, well, here's what the error report said. Yes, in the programming, this is what it was experiencing, and this is exactly how it responded. And you can at least know how it's responding, right? The interesting thing about modern AI is that that's not how it's programmed. You can't possibly program it that way because it gets too complex. So what you do is you set up a neural network, a little computer system. You give it some very basic parameters. Say, don't let the jet go too fast. Okay. And then you give it some training scenarios. And you put it in a bunch of different scenarios, and you say, here you are, here's the airspeed, what do you do? And it looks at it and it says, oh, I'm too fast, I'll pull the throttle back. and then you know whether that was the right thing to do or not, and so you say yes, you were right, or no, you were wrong. And it's just like training a dog or a kid or whatever. You have to do this over and over and over again, and over time, the computer basically teaches itself, it writes its own code to do this. And in order to train any of these things, whether it's the auto throttle in an airliner or the lane keeping in a self-driving car, you have to have hundreds of thousands or millions of training scenarios for it to go through in order to just do that one simple task.
That's right. And what I didn't mention about this last time, Taco, at one time marker, when this all started going haywire, there were 10 faults registered at the same time.
Wow.
So as Jason is saying, there are all these little minions, and all the subsystems, all the systems are connected to ECAM. ECAM is a monitoring computer. It's not the brain to say, yes, this is really what's causing it. It just says, give me all your inputs. It's like a giant octopus, and all the user systems are built in testing themselves and saying, yeah, am I okay? Yes, I send a signal to ECAM. Yeah, I'm okay. If I'm not okay, if I'm tasting bad airspeed or bad angle of attack or bad altitude, I'm faulty. And this is what happens when we have the revolving failures. And I describe it in no man's land as being in a classroom with 100 first grade kids and going, okay, who can tell me what 1 + 1 is? And you get to go home early. And you have 100 kids going, I know the answer. I know the answer. Pick me, pick me, pick me. And that is what was happening for us. All these systems are going, I'm faulty. I'm faulty. Look at me. Reconfigure me. I'm faulty. I'm faulty. And the ECAM just goes, well, my job is just to display that to the pilot. But that failed because it was overwhelmed. Yeah. And that's a bad crew member. It's like, I'm sorry, I'm overwhelmed. I can't really help you. I'm going to just withdraw support. I'm just going to sort of sit over there and bubble and salivate a little bit, but I can't help you. And the only place where the sequence of failures that we had, especially with the angle of attack in the computation of mixing up a good value of angle of attack, a raw value to the digitized value, was at Airbus headquarters. They have this supercomputer called the Iron Bird, and you can read about it in their magazine, which you can get online. And that's the only place. It's a computer.
Oh, we lost him.
Right in the middle of a great piece.
Yeah, you'd had enough of him, right? You just said, that's it.
That's right.
He's done.
He's done. Kev's done. Hey, so Australian internet. Here we go.
Yeah, could be. Oh, he's back.
I'm having troubles today. I think I got COVID in my internet.
Computer.
Hey, I think your computer's not digging the conversation. It's saying,
Probably.
I'm gonna get it.
Hal doesn't like us talking about it this way.
Yeah.
That's it. SkyNet is watching.
Yeah.
So
but basically,
yeah,
it's connected to a laptop, and they were able to input the extreme values and see what the system would do. And that's how they found out, this algorithm that tests extreme angle of attack is wrong. So we got to fix that. And there's a whole history, and it's in the final report, which is quite interesting to see the history of how it was developed, etc. And now they fixed that. But you can't recreate this in the simulator. You should be able to, and you could if you have a module and you push that and say, hey guys, tell me what are you going to do with this? And you plug it in just like you do with wind shear, just like you do with severe damage or whatever on an engine. Check this out. And you need to generate startle. You need to generate over a high workload so that the pilots see it. It goes into their memory. And now that's part of their tool belt. I've seen this now. Hey, okay, I'm not going to panic. I'm not going to get on the controls. I'm going to sit on my hands because Airbus says when things aren't going right, it's one of their golden rules, disconnect the autopilot and fly manually. But what happens when the autopilot is taken away from you and you're forced into manual flight without any warning? that's startle. That's confusion. It's like, why do I have to fly the plane? And these are the holes I talk about in the design, whether they're intentional or not. This is the unintended consequence of this new technology, and pilots need to be prepared for that.
Somebody asked a question last week. Was the autopilot disengaged in the second event?
Yeah.
So the autopilot's disengaged in the second event?
It was disengaged in the first event too.
Okay, so it just
let me backtrack. It was disengaged before the first pitch down.
Yeah.
So this is a point I was trying to make last week. The status of the autopilot, engaged or not, has got nothing to do with the ability of the aircraft to apply a correction in response to a excursion outside the inflate or what it perceives to be that. So it's not about the autopilot being connected or not. The autopilot was off before the pitch.
Yeah.
Right. And Jason, were you talking about the pictures to train AI, the cat?
Yeah.
Was that your article?
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, talk a little more into that, because you kind of brushed on it in terms of a airliner, but let's talk about our people that are driving really cool cars that they could take a nap in, or sit there and drink while they drive, or crawl in the back seat and take a nap. How some of that's working. How do you train that?
Right. So you don't program an AI, you train it. You just give it some parameters, and then you give it some training scenarios, and you say, off you go, and you just see how it works. And so the example I use is, you could take cat pictures from the internet, and you just flash a picture up to the computer and say, is this a cat? Yes or no? And it can guess. And after a couple, flash up a picture of a dog. Well, if the computer's only seen 3 pictures and the dog has pointy ears and a tail, maybe it thinks, oh, that's a cat. It looks like a cat. And you say, no, wrong, computer. And so it learns, and it adjusts its pathways, and it adapts. And over time, the more pictures you show it, the better it's going to get at that, to the point where an AI that could be right in the high 90 percentile of times, that'd be a really good AI. So is 99.4% of safe flying good enough, or safe driving? We'll get you there safely 99.4% of the time.
Yeah, but that takes hundreds of millions of hours of training.
Yeah, it takes a lot of training
to do that, right? So who is actually doing the training for all of these cars right now? Who's training the AI? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, so you start off in a lab, and you just have underpaid interns doing it in a lab, clicking right, wrong. But eventually, you've got to take a product to market and start making money off of it. So with your cars and with Siri on your iPhone right now, or all the personal digital assistants, all those kind of things, it's you and me that are testing it. And those companies with the self-driving cars are recording everything that happens in your car at all times and feeding that back into their big AI system to train and refine it. And the U.S. Highway Transportation Safety Association has actually written a strongly worded letter to some of the companies doing this, saying that may not be the greatest thing to do. That may not be the most safe course of action.
Yeah, because basically you're saying we are all, if we're driving those, we're crash test dummies.
Yeah.
And sorry, Jason, go ahead.
Well, it's just their ultimate out, their lawyer's answer to that is, well, we never said it's fully self-driving. The disclaimer in the manual that you never read says, at all times you should be awake and alert and ready to take control at any moment. Right. So they're still depending on the human being in the loop, and they're relying on that to safely train their AIs.
And I talk about this a little bit in the book about automation in vehicles now. And first is it regulated? And I'm sure there are some regulations about what it can and can't do, but is this going to be a Boeing moment for the NHTSA, where they go, well, we just let them do it, and now look at what we've got? And only recently they've said, okay, if you have manufacture these cars, or if you own one and there's an accident, you have to report it to us so that we can monitor what's going on. But is that all that the action that's going to be taken? And we depend on the regulators to make sure that these things are safe. And okay, they probably are when everything's working, according to what Pete says, when everything's working. But look at some of the accidents that have happened with these cars, with LiDAR, with radar, with
the most advanced technology we have.
Object. Yeah. So a stationary object, and it just drives into it. And the first one that happened, I think, was in 2016, where there was a big white semi-trailer sort of turning in front of this car, and the 2-megapixel camera, which was like the original flip phone inbuilt camera on your phone, could not process that was an obstacle. So it's not an obstacle. I'll just keep going. And it smacked into that thing. Can't remember if it killed the driver or not, but I think it did. And you're going, well, oh, okay, we fixed that now. Now we've got better cameras. But you're mixing these automated cars in with a very unpredictable environment, other drivers, environment, roadworks, changes of route, and it's like Tomorrowland at Disneyland. When I was a kid, they had the cars, what was it called? They're those little cars, and you had a gas pedal, but everything was on a track.
Yeah.
So you can steer as much as you want, but as a little kid, I'm going, yeah, this is great. I'm steering really well, but it's just on a track and it's just moving around, and you can go fast or slow. And what happens when the car in front stops and you don't see it? Bang, you hit it. So what my point is, you can't, if you're going to be automated, everybody's got to be automated. You can't mix these two vehicles together, and there have to be, there have to be different highways that are approved for that, and it's just huge. So it's all for safety, right, Jason? We're bad operators. We're bad operators in airplanes. We're bad operators in cars. So we automate them. We take the human out of the loop, but I don't think that's wise.
Until that doesn't work.
And drivers need to be trained better than they are.
Yeah.
Pilots are the only ones that are really authorized and trained to talk and operate machinery at the same time. I say this to people all the time. They hate me for it, but it's true.
Yeah. A buddy of mine wrote a science fiction, well, it's a fiction book, and it has a little bit of science fiction in there that scares me in terms of when you have fully automated AI and somebody is able to hack into it and launch a Trojan worm that gets into the AI. Imagine the damage you could do if you're able to get into the AI for all these self-driving cars and tell it, when you see a red vehicle, speed up and hit it. How many accidents it would cause. I mean, MH370 disappearing out there in the Pacific. What if it downloaded something through the Wi-Fi system? I don't know.
So one of the interesting things about that is with traditional code, computer code, like on the A330, you can go line by line through that code and see how it's going to react and see what it's thinking, how it works. With modern AI, you can't. You can't go into the code and look at it and understand it. A human could never interpret that. And so you train the AI, it's trained to do something. You don't really know what. You just know that in the lab it's successful this percentage of the time. And then when something goes wrong, you have no way to debug or find out what's going wrong. And potentially, if somebody were to introduce some malware in there, I don't know if you could detect it or not. It might be completely invisible.
Or just, one tweak of something that, like I said, speed up to hit anything red.
Yeah.
Well, I think they've actually built computers to build the software now. So the human builds the computer, the software engineer, but the computer system itself is actually generating the code, and it's checking it itself. It's just too complex.
Right. It immediately is too complex for us to even comprehend. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And I know, Jason, you've read iRobot, the original iRobot.
I love Asimov. Yeah.
That book, and again, I recommend people read that. This was written in the 50s, but all the things that are happening now, Isaac Asimov predicted, and a series of short stories. And as time goes on and systems get more complex, robots, as they were called then, humans have to figure out a way to trick them to get them to do what they want. And it's a fascinating book, and I read it a couple of times as I was writing No Man's Land. I'm just going, God, he's picked it all, and what happened to us was science fiction, and but great book to read.
Yeah, and with all these things, I mean, you guys are touching on it. I know I don't have to convince you, but this is a case not for downskilling pilots or not for saying, hey, we don't need 2 pilots, we only need 1, which is being mooted worldwide. We actually need to upskill pilots to deal with this sort of stuff, rather than building this unintended consequence of firstly complacency and undermining basic pilot skills that go, hey, back to your first flight, wherever that was in your life, where, hey, power plus attitude equals performance. People forget that. Yeah. You know, you've got 20,000-hour pilots who go, I don't know what attitude I need right now. You kidding me? You're flying this thing in command, but we can't set an attitude. So, yeah, I mean, I'm really an advocate for pilot training in this regard and just awareness. I think some of the UPRT stuff they're doing now is going to move towards that. I can't speak with any great authority on that, but I've just seen
UPI. You're saying
UPRT, prevention and recovery training.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so basically, unusual attitude recovery. But the first thing you sit on your hands, as Kev touched on, and breathe and recognise, and then act rather than jumping in. And it's a step in the right direction because, of course, when these failures happen, they happen suddenly. And they happen spectacularly at times. And, back to power plus attitude equals performance, the first flight you ever did, right? If you don't know what the power should be and you don't know what the attitude should be, then you're in trouble right from the start, right? Yeah, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but yeah.
I do a lot of general aviation flying. I teach in the Icon A5, which is a great airplane because it's just steam gauges and an AOA indicator right here, right? And I find that I land better in the Airbus or the Mad Dog or whatever I'm flying if I've been flying the Icon recently because it hones those skills, it refreshes those skills.
Agree 100%.
Yeah.
And is there a fly-by-wire trainer?
I don't think
there's a market.
Is there?
No,
I don't think there is.
No.
So Airbus always makes this comparison that what you're talking about is a conventional airplane where the pilot is conventionally linked to the flight controls. Airbus is unconventional. It's a new generation, but we're all trained to conventional. So when things happen and you look at some of the accidents, and Peter picked up on it with Air France 447, and Airbus says, if the autopilot, if the plane's not doing what you want, disconnect and start flying it. But when you're put in this situation where the autopilot is taken away, the plane's doing stuff you don't know, and you get on the controls and you start moving the control stick on an Airbus, you don't know what's happening. And it could just be like me, where there's nothing there, or you are actually making inputs that are compounding your original problem. And that is the flaw I see in that. If you're flying a fly-by-wire plane from the start, you know that stick does rate and magnitude and sets trajectory. In a conventional plane, you are setting the trajectory. You are controlling the pitch and rate and magnitude. So to say, yeah, it's really easy to fly, but when you get in a situation, out of control situation or a startle situation, and you start getting on that stick in an Airbus at altitude, which there are some dire consequences. It's very twitchy up there, and but that's what Airbus says to do. But
exactly,
it's putting the cart before the horse. If the autopilot is taken away from you, the automation is now degrading you and putting you in the spot. Now you must take action from being a passive monitor, drinking your cup of coffee, looking outside, going, "Isn't this great?" All of a sudden, all this stuff starts happening. It's startle, and startle factor. And I thought the FAA was supposed to address this 4 or 5 years ago. Startle factor training. The first thing I did, I was shown in my very first flight in the Navy in a T-28 was my instructor pulled the throttle back and says, "Okay, we're going to do engine failure. Now let's go through what you do. And I'm going, what, you pulling the power? And he went through the whole sequence, forced landing, all the sequence for trying to restart the engine, all that stuff. I was introduced to Startle on my very first flight. How do you instill that now in a simulator?
Mm-hmm.
You can, but it's much harder.
It's a little
if
bit
that
harder.
building block is missing from your experience. And it needs to be done because, as Peter's saying, all of a sudden, now what? Here's the startle factor. That's a huge blank of your brain stops working. And the big question mark comes over your head and the plane's moving and you're going, what do I do? If you don't know what to do, this is not the right thing to do immediately, even if you're going down, because it may not give what you want.
Well, you're what about a very experienced crew who's not able to make any inputs or control to a computer-driven object, whether an airplane or a car? And case in point would be the demo team doing the Paris Air Show in the Airbus, showing off their new airplane, and flew right into the trees. You remember that one?
Yeah.
Because the computer thought, well, surely these guys must be in the approach mode, so they got the gear down or whatever it was, or they had however they did it, they just flew by the crowd and they couldn't get it out. And they're just like, wait.
And
so now
that is the prime example. That crew were handpicked pilots. One was a French Air Force display pilot leader. And they put the plane in a position. They put that A320 in a position and pulled the thrust back to idle as they went whistling past the crowd going, hello, hello. And then, hey, look at the trees. And conventionally, this guy knows I can go full backstick and full power, and I will power myself through high angle of attack. I will miss those trees. But the artificial intelligence says, oh, no. I can only give you this much. You want max? I give you this much. So you see the plane go in like this. It's at the maximum nose up that the computer said I can give you for all this configuration. And yeah, that was part of it, but they put the plane, if you go further back on how they got to that point, they made some decisions that were not probably the right choices.
So I like what you're saying about training, Kevin. I've seen this kind of dynamic play out with the new A220 on both the maintenance side and the pilot side. So on the maintenance side, when you think about an airframe and power plant mechanic in the United States, what training they have to accomplish, what learning objectives they have to get their rating. They have to learn how to time a magneto. They have to know how to work on a carburetor for a piston engine. They have to know how to sew fabric for a fabric aircraft and pop rivets. There's very little in there on how to run a computer system or a fly-by-wire computer system. And so you're getting these mechanics who are very smart, very intelligent people, but all they have to go by is, well, let's read the manual, see what it says to do, and try to follow that. But we're not giving them the opportunity to build an intuitive understanding of the system they're working with. And so there's a room to train them there and really expand that training profile. And it's the same thing with the pilots. When the A220 was new, it's a narrow body, doesn't pay the most. So some of the new captains who've been over to it had been Mad Dog pilots. And so I was an FO on the 220 flying with these Mad Dog pilots who were new to it. And they went from, no kidding, steam gauges, and it has VNAV, it has a GPS, but really it's almost just a VOR airplane, to an A220, which is eye-watering avionics. It's just beautiful, but they some of them hated it because it was just too much information. It was difficult to process, and you can't have the same level of understanding of the system with the training that we have from where they've been.
Well, also you got to put in there that the lawyers have dumbed down the manuals so much that the 727 panel checkout was, and almost every airplane was a 2-hour oral with a check airman sitting there with a pointer going, okay, when you flip this switch, that connects to the hot battery bus. What happens now? What buses get powered when you turn the battery switch on? Okay, break it down. All right. Now when you hit that, what power source brings that and opens that valve. You had to know this stuff. Now you don't. I think because the lawyers have dumbed down the manuals, and Boeing, when you look at the products, I'm just a Boeing guy, but when you look at the products that they give to us, they say you have to use this. This is what's been approved by corporate and the lawyers. So it makes it very interesting that you have people come in that have never had to memorize these systems or figure out, if I do this, that means I'll be able to get the flaps down easier if I flipped standby, or if I did something over here, So to put the systems 2 and 2 together, we don't have that anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
No. So in your case, a cascade waterfall of solutions or of problems that you can't find a solution for in the manual because it's going by too fast. And that is definitely a problem that they need to fix. That was demonstrated also by the Canadians when they ran out of gas over the Atlantic and had deviated for the thunderstorms because the fuel pump was the wrong size and rubbed the fuel line. And then they ended up dead sticking into lodges magically. I mean, those guys deserved a Congressional Medal of Honor for that. That was superior airwork. But they tried to hang the guy because he didn't follow whatever latched on to the thing and systems wise figure out the 20 different messages he was getting. I mean, that's complicated.
Well, and this brings up, Taco, one of those articles I sent you about praise the machine and blame the human. And in any automated system with a human operator, the human is there to absorb the blame if something goes wrong. They rarely go into the automation to say, hey, this caused this, not the human, because they're just there to absorb the blame. The moral crumple zone, they call it. This author calls it. And it's like, if the pilots aren't trained to deal with this, how can they be blamed? Mm-hmm. And the MCAS accidents, at least the first one, are the pilots didn't even know is installed. But, the pilots didn't interpret this. The pilots didn't do this. The pilots didn't do this. What about the manufacturer, which eventually they did zero in on to say, why didn't you tell these guys this? Why did you modify the power of the MCAS system? Why did you have just one angle of attack sensor instead of two, but initially, they're from Indonesia. They're bad pilots. They didn't know, they're not trained, but it always goes back. And if you read even some of the Airbus accidents that have happened in Europe, Airbus is owned by the European Union states. Many countries are involved with Airbus. And so is the BEA, the French ATSB, and that is also state. And so when you read some of the reports, the accident reports that the BEA makes, they focus on pilots' actions, pilot errors, pilots what they said, because the flight recorder, the voice recorder is not protected like it is here in Australia. And some of the stuff I read, at least about Air France 447, was very, very concerning to me because there was a lot of subjective reporting. The pilot may have thought that this was caused by overspeed, so he pulled the stick back. And the pilot may have recognized or incorrectly recognized that this meant this. And of course, the pilots aren't around to defend themselves, so you can pin anything on that donkey, as many tails as you want, because they're not there to defend themselves. Pete and I are here, and we gave the testimony to our ATSB, which was invaluable because they're hearing firsthand what we saw, what we did, what we were thinking, and that's all in the report.
Well, the MCAS problems, when we talked about one angle of attack, that there's so many holes in the Swiss cheese that lined up for those. The pilot's not knowing about it. The single angle of attack, because the airliner wanted to save $184,000, so they only installed one. A bad day with the bird perhaps going down the side and taking that one AOA out, the noise distraction was a huge thing. And you guys experienced that all the way until, was it Pete or who went down into the E&E and pulled the circuit breakers?
Yeah, Ross,
That
the
was,
second officer.
Well,
Yeah.
Peter was talking about that before.
yeah, somebody had to go down there and do it. You're still listening to all that distraction. I mean, I know
To
you
be
get
clear,
used to
on
it
the
after a
ground.
while, but
Hmm.
you kind of tune it out after a while, like the Super 80 when the trim wheel goes, and I'm like, I'm in the jump seat and I go, what is that noise? And the guy goes, oh, that's the trim. And I go, what? Why is it doing that? And he goes, oh, that's just the way it works. Don't worry about it. After 3 flights, you'll never hear it again. And he was so right. You know,
True.
you never, it just
Well,
moves on its own.
Well, Taco, you're already making a lot of comparisons between those MCAS accidents and Qantas 72. And you're looking at two different types of airplanes. One is conventional, 737, and the other is Airbus, computerized fly-by-wire. But the nature, when you overlay all the things that happened to them and that we experienced 10 years earlier, you're going, haven't they learned their lesson? You know, stick shaker in the MCAS was going off perpetually. You can't cancel that because, well, you're going to stall. So I'm not going to let you do anything. I'm going to keep warning you that you're going to stall. And that was huge noise, I'm sure. And the stick is vibrating in your hand and the pressure is increasing and the ground is coming up. You know, it's very, very similar to what we experienced with all the sensory overload, plane moving, confusion, put in a situation where we don't know, we've tried to take action and it hasn't worked. And what are we left with? Luckily, we were left with something that we could work with.
Well, you know, it's crazy. In 2008, I was in Afghanistan. So they were a little bit busy with all the stuff going on there that we only had AFN one channel to watch or whatever. Sometimes you catch CNN.
Yeah.
But, you know, I never heard about your accident until Bio told me about it. Hey, I got an F-14 buddy who was involved in a horrific deal over the Indian Ocean. Have you ever heard about this? I'm like, no. So I Google it, look you up, watch the videos, and just like, oh my God, I got to talk to this guy because it strikes right in the heart of an aviator not being able to take care of his crew or his passengers that we get paid the big bucks to do. So your stuff, you're saying 10 years ago, I wish, I mean, it took the MCAS incident to bring about that change and the training. I wonder, has Airbus done that? Because I meant to ask some of my Airbus fleet check airmen if your situation has been incorporated anywhere in their training when they get into initial training, and I doubt it.
Probably not, but at the end of the ATSB report, and they did a great job to try and explain what happened, and why it happened. But that's as far as they go. And they list a lot of the actions taken by the manufacturer to deal with. But did they check up on that? Did they say, okay, did you guys do this like you said you were going to do? And there are some things there I know they didn't implement. And I was off for 8 months when I came back to work, and the company knows about this accident. And 8 months later, I'm in the simulator doing my recurrent, re-qualifying, and there was none of that. There was no discussion. It's just like, oh, well, they fixed it. We got this procedure now, so you don't have to worry about it. I'm going, what? This is the worst thing that can happen in this airplane. And you're not even talking about it to the pilots. They're calling me, actually. The pilots are going, hey, what happened? What should I do? And I'm going, it's not my job. But it's almost like, let's not look under that rug because there's something really ugly under there. Let's just keep it there. And it's fixed. They told us it's fixed. So we accept that. And that's the airline management talking to the manufacturer. And I'm sure the same for Boeing and MCAS. People are saying, is this okay? Is this okay? Yeah, it's okay. It wasn't until the Ethiopian CEO said, I'm grounding my planes. Then everybody grounded them.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well,
they're
like I
stuck in
said-
this mindset, aren't they? I guess the manufacturer and the companies, where obviously they want to keep their airplanes flying, but the mindset is that this thing is great, it's working well, there's a small problem and we'll fix it. But they're not looking back far enough, to these, I know I'm banging on about this, but de-skilling pilots. So the automation, you're not flying the airplane as often as you need to. And you guys would probably, I'm sure, be old enough to remember the American Airlines guide with his training video, talking, Children of Magenta. He's saying, you guys, you need to disconnect the damn autopilot and fly the airplane. You need practice at manual handling skills. And one of the unintended consequences of all this stuff is that we've de-skilled our pilots terribly. And I've seen it even in big companies where, with good intentions, they go, oh, you know what, base training, what we call base training in Australia, you convert to a type, say an A330 or a 737, they give you an aeroplane for like 3 or 4 hours and you go down to a remote airfield and fly 20 circuits and then fly it home and land it. Base training, right? They don't do base training anymore. They do sectors. They do line training. So you take off and the guy says, all right, this is what we're going to do. Take off, plug the automatics in, now manage it on departure. Yeah, there's a time and a place for that. Fly the sector, fly it down the ILS and disconnect when you're happy. So, of course, the trainee gets to 500 feet, takes the autopilot out and lands it. So the net effect of that is he may as well have been in a simulator, because all he's done is fly the first 1,000 feet manually, fly the last 500 feet manually to touchdown already lined up and on the glide slope. He's not looking out the window going, where's the airfield? How far am I? Oh, I'm a bit high. This is what I'll do with the thrust. This is what I'll do with the attitude. I'll take flap a bit earlier. None of those thought processes are practiced, because the over-reliance on the automation is trained the guy to always expect it to work. And when it doesn't, you've just set yourself up to be bitten on the bum really hard. Really hard.
I'm really happy with my company. Our flight ops manual actually says you will practice all levels of automation. We want you to click it off and fly it, and make sure you're proficient at all things. And you're not going to do that on the busiest day going to Chicago O'Hare, where some deviations are going to make somebody mad. But when it's appropriate, do it and click it off and fly it. And I have also heard of carriers, especially certain carriers overseas, where if you have the autopilot off, the chief pilot's going to be knocking on your door the next day asking why. And worst possible philosophy.
Growing up, we all military guys, and we're all hand flying and hand jamming the whole time. Half the time the autopilot didn't work in our C-130. You're hand flying it. But you come in here and now you made it to the majors. And like you said, like I hand fly up to 18,000. And then when I hit 18, we do transition, put the autopilot on for the most part. Okay, emergency's over. Autopilot A is engaged, So, and then coming in, we don't turn the auto throttles off at all. I don't know about you guys.
We get to, it's good.
Yeah, we don't turn them off. If you do, you got to add extra wing corrections and all that stuff. But I turn it off and hand fly, but I won't do it from altitude down, because with the RNAV approaches nowadays, it's too complex. You get that tunnel vision if you're focusing on just this, and now you're trying to make crossing restrictions. So I just let the computer handle that. I monitor as I tell the guys, okay, look, if you have an emergency or something happens, you have the FO, who's a highly skilled, trained pilot, usually a flow-through guy from one of the regionals or a military guy. I go, hey, have him fly and talk, and then you sit back and you're James Kirk. You're telling Sulu to turn left or turn right, or you can see something, the bigger picture, with your experience level that he may not have. And then you're also telling Uhura to go ahead and talk to ATC. And so you're incorporating Star Trek as your Captain Kirk sitting back. And then I tell him, make sure you have your most sexy man voice on, because all your friends are going to play that ATC back on Facebook and send it to all their friends. Hey, man, listen, his voice is like 5 levels higher. Oh, my
That's
God.
right. Don't sound bad on the radio. We said that last week, right?
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
It's important.
No, but we get to the majors, and then most of the time, especially when you're on 7.4, think about this. When you're flying and you take off, you probably hand fly it nice and easy up 10, 18,000 feet. If you flew it all the way, hand fly it all the way up to altitude, that's great. That's a long ways, but you've got 13 hours to go. And when you come into Paris or you're coming in somewhere and you're having a communication problem, you're listening, and the girl's voice is going, American, and I'm like, did she just say descend to 14 or 12? Confirm. And then there's all that communication going on in the background. You can't get a word in. And then you're just praying that you got the right thing. All right, let's break in on somebody. But yeah, you don't want to hand fly it. You want the computer to be able to, you want to monitor everything, because it's just nowadays with the arrivals, it's too complex.
Yeah, I agree. And there's a time and a place for everything, and there's if you're tired or the weather's bad, there's not the right time, the right place.
Right.
But we don't always take advantage of the right time. Just by a matter of policy, we go, oh well, the automatics are the preferred mode of operation. We'll do that, and we undermine our own skills by not practicing. And if you're a piano player and you only practice the first few bars and the last few bars, the middle of the song would be crappy because you never practice it. And it's a pretty same analogy, I think. Pretty effective analogy. But there you go.
Well, so most of the guys will do visual approaches. They'll back it up with the ILS. We do visuals.
Yep.
I practice a lot of Cat 3 approaches because we hand fly Cat 3 with the HUD.
Yeah.
And I love doing it. So every time I get a runway where I can look through the HUD just to gauge how the graphics are working, okay, that's going to line up. And then the very first time I did a no kidding Cat 3, it was beautiful and it worked great.
You were confident, right?
I was very confident because I kept, train like you fight like you train. But then the next leg, it's a Cat 3 or it's right at Cat 2 minimums. And I shot the Cat 3 to make sure I got in. Well, I break out and the LED lights were so bright. I had the HUD turned down. It was early morning. I had the HUD turned down and the lights blew everything out. And all I heard was 50, 40, 30, 20. And I'm like, ah! And I pull back and I looked at the FO and he goes, hey boss, I think my watch stopped. I think, ow, I think my filling fell out. And I'm like, yeah,
I've never done that.
Yeah, that was an OK 3-wire, baby. Yeah. Hey, at least the mast didn't drop out of the back. That's all I'm saying.
Oh boy, we've all been there.
Yeah, but no, you're right. I mean, more guys need to get the practice in, and especially with what we have. But hey, Jason, I want to leave on this. We talked about the one pilot proposition. How far out do you think they really could do Mitch Bell sitting at home playing a joystick on his computer, flying the airplane with some flight level guy sitting in the cockpit on break in a cot, something?
I think it's years and years. I mean, decades. That brings up, a whole slew of other problems, whether it's connectivity to the aircraft. And I flew in the Air Force, and we have drones. They'd go lost link all the time, and when it's lost link, nobody's in control, right? So, is that backup co-pilot back in the States any use to you if you're over the Atlantic? No. If you go lost link, the other part is you had the was it the Air Berlin flight where they just descended into a mountain, right? The FO locked the captain out, shut the door, locked it, and just
German wings.
German wings. Just descended into the mountain, right? So it's unfortunate. It's not great, but the fact is, humans aren't perfect either, and our procedures don't ever let a single person be alone on the flight deck for that reason. There has to be some backup there, and it's not just that. There's old captains who have a heart attack. There's all kinds of things that could go wrong. A bird strike come through and injure somebody, right? Or the turbulence and you're not strapped in enough and you bang your head and you're incapacitated. There's a lot of ways that a single pilot up there could be a problem. And then you're relying on this tenuous link back to somewhere. I think that's worse than zero pilots, honestly.
Yeah, well, I'm not putting my family in the back of a plane like that.
No.
I want guys like you all flying my airplane with me and my valuable commodities in the back.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah,
damn Skippy. Well, I tell you what, there was a couple things somebody asked Sammy.
Oh yeah.
Let me ask this. See if it'll show it. I'm having my computer's just a wee bit slow tonight. Let's see if it comes. Mitch, question. There's a limit to how complex a system humans can fully understand as aircraft become increasingly more complex and SW based to understand in detail. Do you think we should seek to simplify and pull back on the automation and the added software?
Well, I think the answer to that is we've already touched on that. This is what
Yeah.
the airline operators want. This is what they want. And do you think the manufacturer is going to listen to us as the in the trench operator, or to the actual person that's buying the airplane from them? And
stockholders.
Yeah, the answer is they're going to make them as safe as they can and reduce the liability for them. And if the pilots are there, well, we'll just blame them because they were there. They didn't interpret this. They didn't do this. They did this. That was wrong. It's a tough place. I think it's a more contentious place for a pilot to be in now, because lots of things are not in your direct control now. They're transparent to you, but they have consequence. And when you're presented with those consequences and you've never seen it before and you don't interpret that properly, well, that was your fault. You should have known this, but you don't receive any training for that. So what's driving it? We already talked about it. The airlines and the manufacturers want the pilots not involved because pilots are not good operators. They make mistakes. And that's a whole drive mantra for more automation. Same in cars. It's exactly the same. It's more safe. It's safer,
And on one level, it's okay. In computer programming, there's a concept called abstraction, and none of us sitting here on this show today could explain in great detail how a microwave oven works, or a smartphone, or I could not go draw my car's engine from scratch and explain all the tolerances and all the compression ratios and everything. I can't do that. I lack that knowledge. Some group of engineers has created all those things, and I am capable of safely using all those devices to my advantage, and that's good, as long as I understand the limitations. And I've got to be able to know what to use it for and what not to use it for. But there's a time and a place for each of those things, and there has to be a backup. I can't say, well, if the microwave oven isn't working, I starve to death. No, that's not good enough.
Well, until they come up with a computer or an AI system that can duplicate what Sully did that day when he safely put that Airbus in the Hudson River, or what you guys managed to accomplish, I'm sticking with two pilots. And I think everybody out there listening to the sound of our voices should probably take a minute and tell their congressman, we only want we need to have minimum 2 pilots in the cockpit of an airplane. And just for the very reason, somebody even said, what if you had a heart attack? And even the FO sitting there and he's trying to get the flight attendant, open the door for the flight attendant to pull the captain's or FO's body out. Neighbor across the street taking off, climbing up through 18,000, had a heart attack. And of course they couldn't get back to the airport fast enough to save him. Yeah. But, it happens. And then all of a sudden you're solo up there. Well, I hope outstanding training, which we give them. And, I know our airlines, we as professionals are always training our younger crews. So let's hope that all that stuff goes right in line and we have no issues.
Yeah, and I'd like to say, automation has improved aviation significantly, and I'm all for it. But when it fails and pilots don't know how it fails, then they're put into a no man's land of automation failure. And that's why I named the book No Man's Land, because you don't know where you are. You're in a dangerous place, and what do? You put your head up, you get it shot off. You run this way, you get blown up by a bomb. And so pilots need to know and be prepared for these types of failures, and that's okay. But you got to show them. You can't just blame them. So
Well, here's a copy of your book. So if you haven't seen this, folks, you can go get it on Amazon, and I downloaded mine. So when I come down under, I've got to get both of you guys to sign it for me. But
yeah,
that's Kevin's book talking about their journey. And I do have to throw this up.
Oh yeah. Yes.
This is Jason's book. I just got it. Pilot Map Treasure Bag. I love the name, man. The title is just crazy. So I've got to read that, and I like to have you back on the program later, and we'll talk about your book. But
Yeah,
also, I was sitting there reading through it, just flipping through it, and I'm like, oh yeah, hey, this is good information. Wish I knew this 20 years ago. But let's see, we'll pull that out. So if you guys don't mind, I'm gonna wrap this up. We'll have I think we've run through all the questions. Is there anything saved rounds, as we always said? If you guys have any saved rounds, now's the time to do it.
I think there's plenty of stuff on the internet. If you just look at some of the accidents in the last 10 years, mostly with Airbus, you can see how the automation put the pilots in a position where they acted conventionally, and that wasn't good enough. And dual input, over controlling, etc. So there's plenty of information out there. CNN probably won't give it to you or spoon feed you. Neither will your airline, but it's there if you do a little bit of digging around. And even in the back of No Man's Land, there's a bibliography there with some really good articles that I researched, and also accident reports. So there's good information just as a starting point there, but it's all over the place. And yeah, like I said, I'm all for it, but the pilots should be in a position to be able to deal with it, and I don't think they are as well as they should be.
Well, just to keep people's minds at ease, these instances are very few and far in between, but when they happen, they have dramatic results. So with that being said, with I don't know how many, 55,000 flights, 155,000 flights that are going on worldwide as we speak, and guys are still out there, you know, fighting the dodging thunderstorms and whatnot. Flying is very safe.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the very few times that the automation causes havoc. But to alleviate that, two pilots, go back to two pilots. Two, just two. You know, minimum two. And or an FB that's wide awake, you know, and got some good rest. But two pilots. Tell your people when they start saying, "Hey, we're going to allow Singapore." Who were the guys? I can't even remember. Cathay? No.
Cathay Pacific and Airbus are working on that.
Working on a single pilot. So what is it? Like this dude has his own little rack in the back, and he's back there watching HBO reruns until something dings and goes, "Oh, hey, I need you." Well, what if that dude is in the bathroom when that happened, and he's upside down on that toilet?
Yeah. Remember, like having a leak in this thing. I mean, can be done. Do we really want to go back to that?
No.
I don't know.
No, crazy.
Right. Sorry, too much? Sorry.
No. It's perfect.
It might have been oversharing.
No, it's perfect. Jason, do you have anything you want to add, sir?
One last thing is, you know, we talk about kind of just the monkey skills, the stick and rudder skills of needing a pilot to be able to fly the airplane. Another thing that Quanta 72 reminds me of is it wasn't just about Kevin's ability to fly the airplane. It was about that crew up there, that crew of 3 people and the flight attendants in back. And another reason you need more than one pilot on board is it wasn't just Kevin flying the jet that got everybody down safely that day. It was the whole crew working together. And that dynamic of, you know, 2 heads are better than 1, 3 heads are better than that, and being able to talk through things and think of things that the other person didn't think of. And I'm going to do this, you do that, and then let's come back together. All those kind of dynamics are huge, and that's a huge strength of our industry. That's another thing you will absolutely lose the minute you take out a second pilot, right? Or you just can't have that. And so good on you guys for not just having the great stick and rudder skills to fly your airplane, but for having a great, you know, crew resource management. to work together and get it back. And well done. Your passengers should be thanking you forever. I hope you guys drink for free down there in Australia because you deserve it. Just great job.
Yeah.
I'm always trying to get free drinks, but we can't go out now. We're in lockdown.
Kev always drinks for free at my place. I think that's working well for him.
Well, yeah, that's right. You were talking about Rob working the pressurization problems.
Yeah.
And you didn't even know he was back there doing it. It was that good, Yeah.
Well, we knew he was doing it, but the thing is you can delegate it and leave it.
Right.
You just go, you do that and go. And you turn your attention back to something else now because you've got a competent third person there who can just take care of that.
But if you have a handful of airplane, you can't be reaching up and flicking that switch every 10 seconds.
Well, that's because all of a sudden you're in that tunnel vision. Well, it takes an IQ of 140 to be an airline pilot, right? That's a proven fact.
Oh, damn. Is that where I've gone wrong?
That's why there's two of us. There's two of us.
Hey, I resemble that remark.
Me too, man. Marines must do MD. Hey, you're going to DA or MDA? Marines do arithmetic plus 50. There we go. Well, listen, guys, I'm going to drop you off, and I can't thank you enough. I actually got to FedEx and I sent some thank you notes to you guys down under, and it should be coming, I think, next Thursday. Let me know. Send me a note when you get it. Jason, when we're off air, just text me your address. I got a little coin and a thank you card I always send out to my guests, and I really, really appreciate you all. Pete, this is the second time that you have been, well, the first time you even talked about the accident was last week. And I'm very appreciative of you coming back. Kev, can't thank enough for you even to go into this. And Jason, your experience with the AI, folks, the link is in the description on the show. Go back and read that. It's a 3-page, it's a long series.
It's a long series, yeah.
Yeah, it's about three long pages, but it breaks it down, as we say, like Jim Kazin would say, we break it down Marine style. And you're able to Barney style, and you're able to sit there and understand how the automation incorporates, how they make it, where we're going to be in 10 years from now. And you guys are all crash test dummies who are driving these self-driving cars and reading a book while you're doing it. Oh, man. So until that time, I think I'm going to stick to my 1959 Daimler Ferret or a 45 Willys Jeep. Hey, I can work on that stuff. Test other cars, I'm not able to. But guys, you all have a great night, and I will see you, or a great day. It's Wednesday down there and down under. Cheers, mate. Yeah, good on you.
Love
it.
Hey, you know what? I forgot. I do have one story for you.
Okay.
So we went to New Zealand. My wife had never been anywhere, so I took her around the world. We went to New Zealand first to hang out with friends of mine in Taupo, and he had an air charter service. So we're flying around, and he's like taking me up in this 185, and goes, "Yeah, we're gonna go pick up some guys." And I said, "Where?" And airstrip right there, mate. And I'm like, "Where?" He goes, "Right there." And I'm looking. I'm like, "What are you talking about? I don't see it." And he goes, "It's right there, mate." And it was just nothing but a little clearing on the side of a mountain. And we landed uphill, stopped, picked up these hunters. 2 guys jumped in the airplane, threw their rifles in the pod underneath, and we took off. And then we landed back at the airport, and my wife goes, we hear these people screaming, and we look up overhead, and they're doing tandem jumps, and they do this beautiful landing. And she goes, "You ever been skydiving?" I said, Yeah. It's awesome. I've done it twice. She goes, "Do you think we could do it?" "Sure." So we go over there and go sign up, and then, "Hey, how much?" "Oh, it's like $50 or something to do a tandem jump." "Oh yeah, that's awesome. Take Visa?" "Yep." And I one question: my wife's 8 weeks pregnant. Is that a problem? And they go, "Hi, oi, Linda. Hey, come here. This is Jumpmaster's wife. Yeah. Hey, look at her, and she's out to here. Hey, when's the last time you jumped?" "Hey, well, I went up today, just this morning." "Yeah, no worries, mate." "Yep. Okay, good to go." So my wife signs a waiver. We put on jumpsuits. I expect a full classroom thing. No, we walked through the door after we put our jumpsuits on, and this little dude walks up and goes, "Oh, I'm going to be your mate." Yeah. And so he hooks up to me and, takes me out there, and guy grabs my wife, and we're the last ones in this caravan. and we go up to like 18,000 feet and drop out and do this through the clouds. We fly through some clouds. It's like hot needles. I'm like, the dude's hiding behind me. Well, that's New Zealand, right? Go bungee jumping, jet boat riding, tandem diving. We go over to Sydney. We're at my cousin's house in Sydney. We want to walk over the Sydney Harbor Bridge. And the lady goes, here's a waiver to sign. She hands, and it says, are you pregnant? She writes, yes. She goes, oh, I'm so sorry. You're not allowed to walk over the bridge if you're pregnant. She's like, wait a minute. I went skydiving and bungee jumping in New Zealand and all this. Well, she didn't go. I went. But they go, oh, yeah. Those Kiwis are all a bunch of crackpots. They're crazy, mate. Yeah, we're more civilized over here in Sydney.
True.
Yeah. So next time I come down, I'll bring her down, and we'll hit Manly Beach and go have a couple of beers, mate. Yeah.
No worries.
Keen
All
on
right.
that.
Keen on that. I love it. All right, guys. Until next time, have a great one, and I'll talk to you soon. All right.
Thanks, Taco.
Yeah, you bet. I'll
Cheers.
drop you off. Appreciate your time again. Here we go. Things are moving slow. Jason's last. There we go. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, I hope this was a productive program for you, and it opens your eyes on some of the issues with automation as we get into a world where your cell phone has more computing power than the entire NASA program to put a man on the moon. Where are we going to be in 10 years from now? Where are we going to be in 20 years? Well, just remember that there are a lot of long-toothed pilots with some gray hair out there, and those are the guys you want. And you want the young, hard-charging pilots that are coming up in the world. You want those guys out there, and you want how many? Two pilots. So make sure you guys got 2 pilots. Write your congressman, tell them this single pilot stuff operation, especially on long haul. Can you imagine me flying a 787 from Dallas-Fort Worth, 15 hours over to Shanghai, China, and it's just me? So I guess I could take a break while H.A.L flies the airplane. No, it's not going to happen. Something happens and the airplane goes left, and you're supposed to go right. No one crashes into a mountain. Half the cockpit lives to talk about it. So make sure you got 2 guys talking. Anyway, until next week, I really appreciate you guys joining Tall Tales with Taco. Do me a favor, hit the taco bell, subscribe, like the program, share it with your friends, and until I see you next week. I know I'm no Joe Rogan, but if anybody knows Joe Rogan out there, tell Joe that I want him on my show. Anyway, you guys have a great one, and adios. As I always say, adios, hasta luego, auf Wiedersehen. Tschüss, shesheneo, au revoir, domarigato gozaimasu, tando shinde kudasai, ciao, arrivederci. How do I know all this stuff? Because I'm an airline pilot. You got to know, say hello, goodbye, and where's the bathroom in 46 different languages. I do, at least, except for Greek. Go ahead. Ask me a language. Pick a language, and I'll tell you where's the bathroom and how do I get there. No. I'm sorry, that's Greek to me. German? No, that's Greek to me. Try again. No, Spanish? No, that's Greek to me. Try again. See, never mind. Anyway, I'm pretty sure you got it. You guys have a great night, and I will see you next week.